I've been hearing from parents that their child is demand avoidance, and so that they are a low demand parent. And as I talk to them, this is what I've been figuring out, is that actually their child is very high demand. And in a lot of these cases, the kids are telling the parents everything that they want, and the parents are jumping around trying to make that happen, and they're not very happy about it. So there's a lot of chaos and things that are happening in the home that nobody's very happy with. The kids are very resistant to anything that the parents want them to do. Their task avoidance is up really high. So what I'm seeing is that parents are having to be low demand, but the kids are being allowed to be more demanding. And I want to talk about that today, because I feel like one of the things that that's doing is it's failing to teach our kids a skill that they really need. And that skill is an executive function that has to do with cause and effect. So children start to naturally develop that cause and effect usually through their toddler years, but because of trauma or because of them being, just wired differently, they may not be learning that in the same way that a regular toddler should learn it. But I'm seeing a lot of kids that didn't learn that in their toddler years. And I think some of that has to do with the way that parents are being taught to parent or not being taught to parent that is causing some of that. And I feel like this is also causing, some of that task avoidance and that need to be very, low demanding and having parents kind of walking on eggshells because they don't want their child to, they have a huge temper tantrum every time they get asked to do something. And that's just not going to be functional over the long run. So, and I take things case by case. So I'm talking in general right now, because in when I'm doing coaching and I'm talking with parents individually, we're dealing with this on an individual level based on where that child really is and their diagnosis and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm not just trying to be ignorant or disregard the fact that there are kids that definitely have some oppositional defiance or are, very avoidant of demands and all of that. But I want you to think about their brain kind of being like a toddler brain, and how they don't like the word no, and they don't know how to be directed in a way that is going to be helpful in your home. They may know how to do it at school because they get directed at school, but maybe not, and if they have an aid or help at school, they are hopefully getting some help with that. But this all has to do with executive functioning, and it's so important that we build these skills, that we don't just write it off, that our child doesn't like this and that we can't do it and we can't teach it, because we really do have to teach it. So what do I mean by cause and effect? So as we grow, we learn that if this happens, then this happens. And it's kind of the law of nature, the law of physics, right? It's kind of the premises really that love and logic is built on, of, we're going to be logical about the consequences and things like that. I still encourage that, but I want to help you to also understand that as a parent, you do really have to teach this cause and effect. It is part of what we should do as parents, as part of what we need to do as parents for our children to be able to grow and develop. No matter what developmental level they are, they need to know that if I touch the hot stove, it's going to be hot and I'm going to burn it. I don't want you to have to build, a safety wall around every danger so that they don't do it. And unless your child is like super low functioning and can't do anything, then your life is going to be set up with some different constraints for sure. But if you have a high functioning child, they need to learn these skills. And so it's different at different levels, but I was just talking to a parent whose child is consistently not getting out of bed unless the parents, they go up like every 5 minutes and they're trying to get him up. They're begging, they're pleading, they're prodding, they're bribing, everything. And their reason is like, I have to go to work. Like I have to get up, they have to go to school. So they feel like it's what has to happen, and it's wearing them out completely. And this is a teenager, and so in this circumstance, I'm recommending that they set some boundaries that are a little hard at first, but these kids need to learn to carry these responsibilities themselves. They have an older son as well, who's actually an adult living with them, and they're still making sure that he gets to work on time and making sure he has all of the things and you know, all the pieces of it. And so what's happening is that they're not feeling any of it. They're creating an urgent crisis type situation, and yet they're not the ones that are bearing the brunt of it or feeling it. And if you watch your kids, they're probably really good at creating a crisis and then kind of stepping back and seeing how everyone else rushes around to try to fix that crisis. And that's not what I want you to do. I don't want you to keep wearing yourself out. So with this particular family, I looked this up for those of you that listen across the states, that it is actually perfectly within your rights as a parent. I'm talking about teenagers, I'm not talking about leaving little children at home, but if you have to go to work and that you would call the police to come do a wellness check if your teenager was left at home, or you can call the police to help you to deal with this. And if you handle it in the right way, you're not going to have to do this all the time. If you do it as a threat, it's gonna happen, and it's not going to be as effective. And I don't want it to be a threat. I want it to be the reality. I'm going to work, and if you're not up and ready, you will lose your ride to work, and this is also what's going to happen. And so you're creating a situation where you're saying, if this happens, then this is what I'm going to do. What that does for you as a parent, as a person, as an adult, is so powerful, because it eases your brain. Your brain is saying, well, what if this happens? And what if they do this? And what if that happens? And so you're kind of stuck in this jumble of kind of chaos. And when you can line out, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. If this happens, this is what I'm going to do. And you know, and don't try to come up with stuff that's like way out there, right? Like, if you don't get up, then you're going to go to bed, early, and you're not going to get to play on the video, whatever it is, right? If it's too elaborate, it's going to be the same burden. You're still carrying it. It has to be in the immediate right now. And the child needs to know ahead of time. You get up in the morning, you get ready by this time, then this happens. And it can be positive, right? You get to have breakfast, whatever it is. Sometimes I find too that parents are so set on all of the things that they want to try to get done in a given time that they're not looking at any of the buy-in from the child, right? Like, keep it really simple, especially if you have a reoccurring issue of getting up in the morning and getting ready. Then we want those 3 things that are done. You get up, you brush your hair, you get dressed, whatever those 3 things are, and you're downstairs, or you're at the table, and then this thing happens. Like, then we'll have time for, like I used to tell my kids when they were teens, we had a place that we stopped and got coffee. They got hot chocolate. It was on our way into town, and I said, if we're all ready, and I have to be ready too, if we're all ready and in the car by this time, we have a pleasant morning, I have no problem stopping there and doing this. I had another family I worked with that once a week on Mondays, they always had a hard time on Mondays getting going, so we just started making it a thing. If they were out the door and ready and there was no unpleasantness in the morning that left mom frazzled, they would stop at McDonald's, and they had a limit and stuff like that, and they would do that. I'm not advocating for any of these things, coffee, McDonald's, whatever. I'm just saying what's in it for them. And it's not a bribe, it's just, if this happens, then this happens. So you can have some positive things on there, and you can have some what we would call negative consequences, right? If you don't get up, if you don't get up by this time and you're not ready, then you're going to be walking to school, or you're going to do this, or I am going to call, Joe, who's an ex-Marine, and he's going to come over and he'll get your butt out of bed. So whatever it is that you set up, and again, like, I'm talking really broadly right now to you as the audience, but know that when we do this as a coaching, it's individualized to your child. But I want you to be thinking about the things that are in your power and your control. The demands that we make on our kids, if we don't have a follow-up when those are not made. And the only thing is that if this happens and my child's going to have a big fit, and then the whole morning's going to be lost. If that's what your cause and effect is, no wonder you're walking on eggshells. So you want to set it up. And if they have a big fit, then what are you going to do? How are you going to handle that? What's going to happen? Does no still mean no? Does this still mean this? Like, okay, well, I'm going to go get ready, and when you're ready, come join me. Works really well. That we're not, I think that you need to look at the places where you're giving a lot of audience to that struggle. So these parents that are spending an hour every single morning going up to their child's room every 5 minutes, and they're really spending time with him, not on the way they want to, but this child is getting his needs met somehow in that, right? And so you have to think about it differently. Like, what is he getting out of that? He's getting something because he continues to do it. It's not unpleasant enough. And so I don't like that kind of nagging, prodding type of parenting. I think it wears parents out, and kids learn very quickly. And they know when the line is. This same kid, every single time we've drawn a line, he goes right up to the line. If we say 5 minutes, he goes right up to 5 minutes, and then he does the thing. He knows exactly where that line is. So you get to choose where your line is going to be. And if you need help figuring out, okay, I drew the line, but then what? That's where you need to talk to a parent coach, because people like me, and it's more than just me out there. We have tons of ideas to make this easier for you. We want it to be easier for you, and it can be easier. It's gonna be hard at first because you're not used to doing this. You're used to catering to their developmental, what you think are their developmental needs and their mental health issues. But I'm telling you that even kids with mental health issues, they need someone to help them to navigate cause and effect, because the whole world is kind of built on this. If I go to work and I put in these hours, then I get paid this paycheck. Where's the paycheck for your kid? And nobody can make that a bribe, right? That's not a bribe. I have things I have to do. That's part of my thing. It's the same way really in our faith, right? We make covenants, right? And we have things that we do. We can't just demand things, right? Like, we have things that we do, and we are in a covenant relationship. And in our families, it's very similar. Like, we have pieces that we do and pieces that other people do. And so you need to be really clear about how much you're willing to do, and how much in what you are expecting that your child can do, and what happens when that's broken. But you also need to keep in mind as you're doing that a lot of times those things that we're setting up are all based on what we want and what we need, and we need to teach cause and effect based on their needs too, right? Like, if they have a need to have that attention, and they know they can get it by having you go to them over and over and over in the morning, rather than you saying, I would love to talk with you further, but please get dressed and then, come in the kitchen so we can talk about that. Or so we can, you set up the parameters so that it draws them in out of their world and their demands into the real world of cause and effect, and here's what I do and here's what you do. Instead, I think a lot of times parents are teaching this almost from the outside of it, right? Like, they're thinking that if they tell their child, like, how do you think this makes me feel? Or, you're wasting all this time, or if I don't go to work, then we're not going to get a paycheck, and then we're going to lose the house or whatever. And none of that is relevant to what's happening in that moment with the child. All they wanted was someone to come and wake them up in the way that they want to be woken up, which is, multiple times of this. It's just very engaging in a way that we don't want to be engaging. So be really definite in this. And then I've even had people that are really struggling with boundaries in their other relationships and how to do that. And so I've been having them work on that of, if this happens, then this is what I'm going to do. And it can calm your brain down. So when your brain is telling you, yeah, but what if this? And if I do this, then this is going to happen. And all those things, you just be like, okay, we'll deal with that as it comes. Right now, if I'm going to do this, and then this is what's going to happen. And so you have to take control of it by actually taking control of it and setting it up the way that you want it to go. Is it going to go perfectly? No. Are you going to continue to have some struggles? Yes. And but this carrying all of this stuff, and I see so many parents that are just carrying all of it for everybody. It's like it's micromanaging, but it's worse, right? Because it's actually hindering our kids at a time when their brain, their frontal lobe, especially when they're teenagers, is growing like crazy. And so it's not that they can't ever, it's that it's difficult for them to learn this skill. And so we have to have some extra ways to teach that. I love helping parents learn how to teach these different executive functioning skills through day-to-day stuff that you have to do anyway as a parent. So you're definitely going to want to set up a free consultation with me, or you can continue to listen to these videos, subscribe to this channel, and get more videos about practical help like this. But consider having a free consultation. You can go to my website, parentingchallengingkids.com, and click on the Get Started page, and let's go. Let's get it done.